So clearly they endured something pretty intense.
There was 2 women
Yes.
and 7 guys. So
Right.
to me, that's a problem already. Especially.
Eyebrows missing, burn marks,
Mhm.
eyeballs missing, tongue
Mhm.
missing.
The bones decaying to that degree in just 4 years. I just don't see that type of decay going.
There's just so much that's off about on both sides. Both sides seem real suspect. I know it's the South, so maybe dental records are a bit trickier down there because they only have maybe 1 or 2 teeth to identify them by.
Have you guys ever had that? Like you driven by a house out in the middle of nowhere, you're like, oh, I wonder who lives there. What's going on?
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
This is going to be one of those. It is. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back to JG's Lounge. I'm your host, Jukebox. We're back with another episode of Essential Eye Sockets, and our guest tonight just informed me that we have a very long intro. So, John, thank you for that. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I got you, bro. I got you.
Well, evolution, man. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, actually. Finally, the weather is getting better, so I can wrap up a lot of things that I'm working on. Because it was way bitterly cold, and I don't like the cold. I like what's behind me. So
True.
yeah, we got a lot of things that we are wrapping up and finalizing, and looking forward to getting those things out there.
Yeah, man. You got a lot going on. A couple of your shows, we're getting relaunched and revamped, and I'm really excited about it. So, we are doing a marathon for one of his shows about that here soon. So, guys, be looking forward to that. Sean Shank, man, how the hell are you doing?
You want the truth or do you want me to lie?
Actually, lie to all of us. We all want lies.
You want lies? Man, I'm doing fantastic. I feel great. Life is amazing.
I said lies. How are you really, sir?
Dude, I feel like shit because my dumb ass started. All right, so I teach college Monday through Wednesday. I teach at 2 different universities, and I use a lot of like examples from my life when I'm teaching class, right? Because that's what I know
Right.
best, right? And I mentioned in one of my classes a couple semesters ago that I wrestled for many, many years and, coached for many, many years. And so one of my students got the bright idea that he wanted to start a wrestling club for the college, which is they want to turn into a team. And he came to me, he's like, hey, you want to be our coach? And me being a dummy who thinks he can still do stuff like he's 20 years old said, sure. And man, I have got lumps and bumps and bruises. I was talking to a nurse friend of mine the other day, and I said, "Look, I've got a sprained kidney,
Oh.
vein flatulence, and I think I'm low on fluid in my femur. Like I am just beat to death. It's good, but god dang, man. But
Right.
otherwise, yeah, I'm fantastic.
Good, man. Sounds like you brought that shit on yourself.
I certainly did, 100%.
Our guest tonight, Job Bless I, aka Justin, or vice versa. How are you, buddy?
Fantastic, I guess is the word I will use.
Okay.
Yes.
You said I guess though. That doesn't really sound very.
This whole "how are you" question really gets me, man, because who's measuring it? How am I supposed to answer it? Life's messed up, man, but it's so beautiful too. So, what are you gonna do? You want me to tell you fantastic, crappy, cruddy, happy, joyful?
You
It's
tell
all
me
of
whatever
them.
you want, and I'll tell you, man. All
I like
right.
joyful. Let's go with joyful then. I change it.
Go with joyful. It's good.
Joyful's good. Joyful's
I
good.
like joyful.
Let's
It's
go.
a good word.
Let's go.
All right. So we're here for a very special episode that we've been talking about for a while. HH Holmes, who was originally Herman Webster Mudgett, which for a serial killer, Herman Mudgett sounds god awful. I'm just going to say that. Anybody whose last name is Mudgett, I'm sorry. That sounds terrible. So Sean, this was actually your idea to dive into this topic. Why did you want to do this specific episode?
Well, okay, so there, man, this dude and all the stuff that surrounds him, his life was crazy, and we were talking about before we started the cast tonight. The guy was a doctor, wildly intelligent. His charisma and his ability to manipulate people, like if you were playing Dungeons and Dragons, this guy rolled double nat 20 on his charisma rolls. Like he was just able to convince people to do things. He was manipulative. I don't think he was good looking, but maybe for the time they thought he was handsome with his big ass mustache. I don't know. But what's fascinating about this guy, for one, is there were rumors for years and years and years that he was Jack the Ripper.
Yes.
And he was almost caught in London and moved here to the States and settled down in Chicago and picked up where he left off. But the thing that's scary about his picking up where he left off turned into a murder motel, which at its height, its zenith, he was murdering the shit out of people during the Chicago World's Fair,
Yeah, which we'll get into.
a crazy story in and of itself. But there were
Yeah.
so many people around that it was like one of those games you play on your phone where you're just pushing all the coins into one place. It's like he was just able to go out and just grab people left and right because nobody noticed.
Mhm.
It's crazy. And when we start getting into this murder motel and the stuff that was in there, just picture like the game Mousetrap from when we were kids, but it actually works and was designed by a fucking psychopath.
He is the definition of a psychopath. I mean, he did everything with the intention of harming people. It was never anything but that.
Right.
So a little bit about the history of him. He was born in 1861, and
What's his name?
his name is HH Holmes.
H.
He had his name changed to Henry Howard Holmes. Was it legal? Who knows? Because at the time, it was really hard to kind of verify documentation, which is how he got away with a lot of the things that he did.
Yep.
So his maiden name is Herman Webster Mudgett, but a lot of people know him as H.H. Holmes.
Okay.
Okay. Are you familiar with him at all?
I am not. The first time I heard about him is yesterday when you asked me if I like true crime.
All right. Wonderful. All right. So he's born in 1861 to his Methodist parents. They're Methodist Orthodox parents. They are from a farming community in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. And they were very spare the rod, beat the child. You know, the dad was a drunk, and he would even use kerosene, rag-soaked kerosene, to punish the children. So at a very young age, he was enduring a lot of what's up, Sean?
Do you want to explain? Because I remember in my studies reading some of the stuff that happened to him as a kid. When you talk about the kerosene soaked rag, what were they doing? So we can get a sense of, because if this is going to connect up to.
Okay. I don't know the reason why he used them. I just knew it was a form of punishment on him.
Okay. Because I heard there was like you soak and scrub was what I read. I don't know if that's true, but there's a lot of like kind of mystification of his past.
It kind of had the same concept of using chloroform, though, is from what I was understanding from my research.
Okay.
And what is your guys' sources? Speaking of
there's Wikipedia, several blogs, and I listened to probably 15 different podcasts about it. But the best resource that I have is Wikipedia.
I read a bunch of books on it when I was a kid. I was a nutter butter when it came to serial killers and occult type stuff. So
I can promise you there's nothing that I will tell you tonight that you won't be able to find.
Right.
Yeah. But that's also why I told him I can't verify exactly what he did with the kerosene.
Right.
I just know they were rag-soaked kerosene used to punish the children.
Dun, 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 dun.
So at a young age, he was actually he was kind of very recluse, held back, going to the woods. At a very young age, he even talked about going and like harming animals in the woods and killing them. Mostly just because I mean, his home life was terrible, so he was going out and taking that out on the wildlife. He was extremely intelligent. In school, he actually got bullied for being so smart. He was also kind of an outcast because of his home life. I actually do resonate with this because I had a very, very abusive childhood with a very religious family, and I was kind of the outcast in school. Um, I bullied. I was bullied younger, not so much in high school, but in elementary school. Um, so I could see that how that would resonate, especially because being smart in school in the small town communities was very rare during his childhood. So a lot of kids did bully him. So at the age of 12 or 13, there's no confirmed time, but there he was apparently brought into a doctor's office by some of the kids in school, and they took one of the skeletons and was rubbing it in his face to scare him. And he even talks about it when he's locked up in prison about how that was what set him on the path that he was on.
Hmm.
During this time frame, any skeletons you saw in doctor's office and science labs, they were actual skeletons. They weren't
Yes.
plastic. They were real bodies. So that kind of kickstarted everything. I'm kind of just abbreviating his childhood because honestly, a lot of this is not about his childhood, but his childhood does play into some of the things that he does to the people he killed in his murder castle.
Okay.
So
Well,
they just
if
go
I
ahead.
may, to plant a seed for later for a question that I'm gonna probably I will bring up again. Here's the thing, like we talked about this a little bit before, Jukebox, with your upbringing and things, and I was severely bullied in school, like severely, up until even my senior year. Um, but I didn't turn out to be a serial killer. You
Hmm.
didn't turn out, for what I know, you didn't turn out
I
to be a serial killer.
I mean, I just don't tell you certain things.
Okay, so
anyway, anyways,
but you see what I'm saying? It's like
yeah,
this gets into the nature versus nurture question, and this is
right.
one of the things I want us to touch on later if we can get around to it.
Mhm.
Is that we've got two examples, 50%, and I don't know about evolution or Ja what their upbringing was like, but you know you can sit there and say like, oh, his parents did this and did this and did this, and it's like, okay, but we have examples here of folks that had some pretty shit, not to get into the depths of it, but didn't turn out to be serial killers, that made murder motels.
Right.
Right.
So I just,
Yeah. Well, and I think you kind of learn quickly after him getting out of high school, sort of how he kind of twists his upbringing into what he became, and
mhm.
which is kind of how it's like that definitely reflects in his killings later on.
I
Um,
think, Sean, to answer your question, there were some things that I think not only me, but most people deal with when they're younger, but they make the choice or decision to not let that affect their outcome. And in fact, they use it as fuel to become something different or something more positive,
Mhm.
uh, to make society better or themselves better,
mhm,
or create something so great that it just brings everything around them to a more positive
mhm.
environment. So definitely understand where you're going with that, and know because you're brought up in a certain way, you don't have to end up that way.
Right. So at the age of 17, John, do you have anything? Or are you good right now?
Nothing.
I like it. Just chilling. You'll have something at some point. You're gonna have something. And I
No,
know what.
my brain is definitely going.
Okay. Good.
But I'm just soaking it all in, kind of
Good.
gathering what this dude's about, what's
Okay.
going on, and waiting for you to get to the
All
point.
right. Okay. So at the age of about 13 or 14, him and one of his neighborhood, they weren't really friends, but they were hanging out in an abandoned house, and the kid he was with, ended up falling off a landing and dying. A lot of speculation on if that was his first kill or not. Nobody knows because there was no one there. Um, but he had already been kind of messing around with animals in the woods at the time and stuff like that. So there's a possibility that he could have pushed a kid off a ledge and killed him. But again, there's no confirmation. But that happened when he was in his like preteen, early teen years. By the age of 17, he graduated high school early, and married a local wealthy farmer's daughter, and actually used their money to pay for him to go to medical school. So within his first year, they were pregnant and have a kid. After he finishes his medical degree, his wife and kid go back home, and he moves to Chicago. So this is like 1880, and his first few years, he hits the ground running with schemes. He starts borrowing money to buy land, and then taking money from lenders against the property to build buildings, and then bouncing out after he gets them built, selling them to somebody else before the lenders find out that he never, so they never get their money. Nobody's
Wow.
getting their money.
He was getting his money.
He was getting money. So yes.
Yeah.
So at the time, there's not a lot of paper, like there's not technology like we have today. So a lot of the things that he ends up doing, he gets away with because there's no way to really paper trail him.
Wow.
Alias names, stuff like that. He did all of it. And he does this multiple times between 1880 and 1885 is where he's multiplying, buying properties by borrowing money and just dipping out.
Big
He ends
bucks.
up marrying a person in Chicago. He's still got his wife back home. He marries a lady in Chicago. They have 3 kids. And he has a drugstore that he had purchased, and he is selling, skeletons at the time. He's going to graves and literally robbing corpses and taking the skeletons and getting life insurance quotes on them, getting the money out of that, and then selling their skeletons to scientists and doctors.
This I'm sorry. This dude was off the hook.
So he really was brilliant.
He
he
is
was something.
extremely smart in what he was doing. He was a decent looking guy. I mean, honestly, I've got a picture of him right here. For the time, a lot of people said he had sort of a magnetism about him. Let's see here.
I don't know if I agree with the.
A decent looking guy is what he said.
Yeah,
He said,
I mean, that's him. That's HH Holmes right there.
Well, I mean, just to first look at this image, he doesn't look like he would be that much of a gangsterific type of person.
Right.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
next level, man. This guy
Yeah.
had he had no limits, no limits.
No, I mean he's got a pretty killer stash. I gotta give him that.
the thing is, I've always thought of and this is one of the most used photos of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is he good looking or whatever? I don't think so. He looks like an irritating guy at a law firm on a legal show, right? Like the little fat guy who's always complaining about shit. But it's just he's got a very unassuming face, and I think that's what makes it seemingly dangerous for people back then. Because he doesn't look threatening. He doesn't have this massive build. He doesn't have a countenance. It's like, oh shit, this guy's scary. He just looks like somebody you walk by on the street.
Right.
He comes off as a person that looks like a salesperson,
Exactly, and that's what he did. Is he sold lies?
Yeah.
That's exactly what he did. All right, so this is kind of where he's establishing a foundation, building money. I mean, he's doing well, and then you get the Chicago Fair. That's the city's planning around 1890. So he purchases a corner lot downtown off 63rd Street in Chicago to build his motel. He builds a drugstore. Basically, the first level was a drugstore, which in the cellar underneath they discover a well, which he utilizes as a mineral spring to sell water. He actually sells it at 5 cents a bottle. from the water out of the well underneath his drugstore. So swindling, man. I'm just right off the bat. Um, and a drugstore back then was not just a going in a pharmacy. I mean, they had like your random potions and elixirs and in the shops, and it's whatever they said it was. So he wasn't a pharmacist. He did all of it. Like he ran the shop. Um, he then built a second story, which had 15 hotel rooms that were dedicated specifically for doing these murders that he did. They had hidden passages, holes in the walls, floorboards that disappeared, rooms behind walls. They were all soundproofed so that his victims didn't know what was going to, be happening. Um, and when he started furnishing this property, he does something pretty clever. He's borrowing money to purchase loaned property and furnishings. He brings it into the motel. A week later, they come to get their money, and all the furniture is gone. And they have a scout that they had sitting outside, and they're like, nobody came and took the furniture. So when they come to collect the furniture, he's like, I don't know where it is. It's not here, obviously. What he had done is put it all in a room, removed the door frame, and walled it up.
Oh, God.
He walls up and keeps all that furnishing. So, I mean, he gets all this furniture for free. He even gets a grandfather clock from another person for the lobby, and he puts it in a room, shrinks the doorway to where it's smaller than the grandfather clock. So when they come to collect the clock, he's like, if you damage my property, I'm going to sue you. So they couldn't get the clock out. So he got the clock. So, I mean, he's just witty, man. He's very witty. What do you guys got so far?
First, I have a question. So, is this guy the reason that the doctor's offices have skeletons in them?
No. Because as a kid, it happened to him. Like they kind of they bullied him and tortured him with one of these doctor's office
I mean,
skeletons.
this is from 1861, right? This is like
So
a long time
at the
ago.
time it's 1890s, but he was born in 1861. So yeah, that was
Hmm.
during his childhood. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, just a question.
And I don't know how much you guys know about the World Fair, but over the course of 6 months, the World Fair drawed in 27 million people.
Yep.
27 million people. So when he's building this property, he's building it with the idea that he's going to make a cash cow out of just luring people in, killing them, selling their body parts, their skeletons. And he continues to do life insurance policies against them. He even has a mistress living with him on the property in a room where he has a step that's removed, and they place like an alarm like bell underneath the step so that while he's doing his stuff, she doesn't know, or he can hear her if she's coming, so he can stop what he's doing and hide it, whatever he's doing. She's living there with her daughter. She ends up dying or disappearing, but
Hmm.
everybody assumes she's dead. Um, but so let's take a pause on this and discuss the World Fair a little bit. Sean, what do you know about the Chicago World Fair? Because you want to dive into this. I know you do.
Well, okay, so the Chicago World Fair was a convergence of a lot of things. Technology that was, and Tesla was heavily involved with the Chicago World's Fair. They had a motorized boardwalk that could carry literally thousands of people.
Mm.
All right. And it's insane the amount. And this is where Tesla was, showcasing a lot of the technology. So people were coming out to see this thing. And you got to remember, too, back at this time in the 1890s, this isn't, when we have things like social media, films, TV, all this bullshit to distract us and things, all right?
Mm.
Not everybody was even reading at this point. I mean,
Hmm.
we if something like this was going on, everybody was coming to it. Like it's like having a wedding in a small town back then. That was like everybody went. That's it. So
Hmm.
you have this massive influx of people into Chicago at the time that are seeing all these wonders and everything, and they supposedly built, the gold lady in the middle of the all the buildings that they put up that they said were made out of plaster and everything. Which anybody that has any conspiratorial mindset, looking at this says no bullshit. This was left over from Tartaria, and they have done studies of the buildings and looking at them even with the bullshit where they're like, oh, these are all made out of paper mache, whatever bullshit stuff they said it was. And they have said even with today's technology moving at just the fastest rates with the most amount of workers and machines and everything else, these buildings that they said that they put up in this short amount of time, they said it's impossible.
Right.
Impossible. So what they are saying is actually happened, and you have to look into the mud floods in Tartaria and everything, that these discovered buildings from ago were actually utilized for this. And then they tore, and this is the weird thing too, they tore everything down afterwards.
Yeah.
Why the fuck would you do that? Okay.
Yeah.
So you have this conspiracy that's kind of surrounding all of this stuff at the Chicago World's Fair. All of this technology that is like, you've got this old world, new world, Tesla, all these things that are going on. And then you've got Holmes, who put his murder hotel, and I believe it was like butt up against where a lot of the action is, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so he was planning on, making a bunch of money, but what he was doing was he was going out and snatching people up left and right. And inside of the hotel, you have to picture this thing like if you saw the movie Sweeney Todd, where he had the barber's chair and like he'd push the button, the chair would go angular and it'd slide down to the basement. Man, there was all kinds of stuff like this in the murder hotel. You had slides that went down to the basement. A slide would go down into a room that was sealed off metal walls. It had gas jets in it, and he would seal them in and turn on the gas. And they, when they actually went into this thing after this was all found out, there were claw marks in the walls and on the floors and things like that. And if you know anything too about the Winchester mansion and how it was built and like the things that went nowhere and stairs. I mean,
that's literally what it was.
Yeah, it's like that kind of construction where it's so crazy. And Ja said, earlier, like this guy was really intelligent. But what's scary is if you know anything about human psychology, generally people that are cunning can pass themselves off as intelligent, but they're just cunning. They're not like doctor smart. They're just really cunning, and that is like a placeholder for intelligence. This guy Holmes had both. The guy was street smart. He was book smart, doctor smart. The guy was cunning. He was charismatic. He was this convergence of all these like terrible things that made him, just a nightmare. Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
this was
that.
Yeah. This is the hotel. This is the hotel.
What is the name of it?
It's gone now. I don't even know if you know what there was a name of the hotel.
I don't.
I didn't see it in any of my
always called
research.
the Murder Hotel.
Yeah.
The HH Holmes
They
Hotel.
tore it down not long after. They ran it for a few more years with a new owner, and then he committed suicide after not long of owning the property.
Wow.
Yeah, no shit. Well, I mean, look at that.
Yeah, it's insane. The way he constructed it, you can actually see like there's hidden hallways. They kind of show some of the things that he like. Some of the rooms have like you can see.
Look at that, like the bathroom. Look at the bathroom. Okay,
Yeah,
so
where
like
he's
that's
coming up out of the floor.
exactly.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep. And
Yeah,
stairs.
and there were chutes that literally dropped bodies down. A lot of these rooms had gas chambers in them, to where he would literally torch the people in their own rooms alive. He would starve them, and then he would drop them down to the cellar. Which I wonder if I can get a good view of the cellar here. Let's see.
And actually, what's creepy about some of those chutes that Jukebox is talking about, some are slides, but a majority of them, if you look at, and I remember looking at some of the plans ago when I was looking into this, We're talking like a laundry chute straight down. So when he's
Yeah.
dropping the bodies, and sometimes they were alive, they
Yeah.
would drop a couple stories and just slud
Yeah.
Hmm.
hit the
Yeah.
ground, and then they're lying down there in the basement, broken, like in a broken,
Mhm.
bloody pile.
Yep. So he also was, flaying
Uh,
them alive. Go
those are
ahead.
like torture tables at the
Yeah,
bottom on the right,
you
right?
see off to the right. Yeah, so
Yeah, that's like
that is
a
an
bunch of
actual
bodies.
medieval stretch device. Yeah,
Jeez.
with where he'd put live bodies and everything like that. So, to get into the whole reason why I brought in Holmes Hotel was its original name. Thank you, Ava. Thank you for throwing it in there. I didn't know. Everywhere I looked, I couldn't find. It was Murder. It's Murder Hotel.
Yeah.
So so thank you for that. So I do know that most of what happened, how he got a lot of these people in, he would lure them in by offering them jobs or
Hmm.
marriage. He would have them turn in deeds to their properties, cash out. He'd get, and then he would do the same thing. He'd get a life insurance policy on them, and then they'd disappear miraculously. And then when they'd come looking for the bodies, he would tell detectives everything from it was a abortion gone wrong. She was upset and left. I don't know where she is. Just whatever he could do to swindle the cops to kind of steer away from him, and they did because there was so
So
much
hold
going
on.
on in the town.
So they were already dead, and how did they get the insurance? Like if the insurance people didn't see them or whatnot.
After so long, I think they just called it. You know.
Well, he would write up fake information on these people. He back in the time, there was no way to really look into it.
And remember, he was a
So
doctor.
all they
He was
needed was a
also a doctor.
body. They
Yep,
didn't need to meet them beforehand before they bought
correct,
the insurance.
correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, Jukebox, were you able to find and this is a curiosity, because of all this scheming and things. That's one of the things I remember too that was incredibly scary about this guy. Did he have a net worth estimate?
I didn't see anything about what he was worth.
Okay.
Uh-uh. I do know that in '93 he makes a trip to Houston, Texas, and starts to borrow money to purchase horses that he was taking to St. Louis to sell. And during that time, he actually met a henchman. Um,
Hmm.
his name was Benjamin Peitzel, and he ends up coming back to his hotel and actually is helping him dispose of these bodies. They had quick chains that would go into like dissolving pits to dissolve the skin and everything off the bones so that they could sell them for the skeletons. They had like crematory like setups to where they could just burn the bodies. And I mean, it was just gruesome. I don't even know like how to. I wish I had like a list of everything that they had in
Jeez.
this cellar. It was just absurd, but all of it was something to do with money flow. But it wasn't just about the money for him because he was literally torturing these people with the intention of harming them. Like these rooms with the kerosene, the gas rooms. I mean, kind of relates to him with the kerosene as a kid, stretching him, starving him, stuff like that. Um, he talked about how, which again you don't know if it's true or not because he was a compulsive liar or whatever his whole life, but he talks about a lot of the things were done to him as a kid. He reflected that on the torture of the people.
That's a huge hole in the middle of that floor, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where he got his mineral water from.
Yeah. The delicious, healthy. It's, you know what? That's the origin of Dasani.
That's where the sound came from. So there is three stories though. The top floor was just hotel rooms. The second floors were all of like the rooms that had the specified torture stuff in them.
Right, but
John, you got?
even oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your question to
No,
Jean,
I
but
didn't know if John had any questions or not.
okay, go ahead.
I don't know. This is all crazy that somebody would do
Hmm.
this. I'm really
Hmm.
thinking about like how he was able to do all those extra rooms without anybody knowing about it. Like,
So
how
he
did
was. There is, according to records, I don't want to ever say any of this is proof, because a lot of this was lied about from him. There was no real records kept by him, but he was constantly firing and replacing construction workers um, throughout the whole building and construction of this hotel.
Yep.
And
So
there's
essentially,
theory
having build
some of
one
them were
thing.
killed in the hotel, but
Yeah.
nobody. I mean, again, those are just theories.
Yeah, but that I read that too quite a bit, is that he would have they would build one thing and then they would either be fired or disappear, and then somebody would come in and do a separate thing. And some of the stuff he did himself, like in my understanding, Jukebox, correct me if I'm wrong, but even in the hotel rooms, he had like cutouts behind some of the places where he had
Yes.
peepholes and things
Yep.
where
Yes.
he
Huh.
could spy on everybody, like you would see in the old, like the old 1950s detective mysteries, where like the paintings there, and all of a sudden the eyes shift out, and two eyeballs pop in and look left and right like this, like that kind of
It's
shit.
exactly what I got when I was researching. Is that
Yeah.
he had these like little peepholes he was watching everybody in.
Jesus.
But yeah, so he was, and a lot of them were getting pissed off because he wasn't paying them. He was lying to all these people. I mean, there wasn't a time where he wasn't lying to somebody. I mean,
Wow.
remember, during this whole thing, he still had a wife back in New Hampshire. They didn't even see. They never even officially got divorced. He's got a wife in Chicago, and he's just gone to this hotel all the time with a mistress he doesn't know
Right?
about.
What a mistress.
So
She's
yeah,
just working the front desk, like
right.
trying to be helpful, and like, yeah, we'll be up for turn down service and everything, and like,
Yeah. So he's
She
got
doesn't know what's going on.
got a henchman. He's got ads out luring in women, and he's just having a heyday murdering people. Man, he confesses actually to 27 murders. However, after he died, a couple of the people that he named were still alive. So even then, he was lying.
Wow.
yeah, the estimates are all over the place. But the reason the estimates are all over the place, here's the thing, from the research that I've done in the past, is that you were talking about how he was selling skeletons earlier.
Yep.
Mhm.
Assumption that from some people, they posited that those were his victims, like not just from the murder motel, but this guy's been killing people throughout his life, and because of the sheer number of people that were at the Chicago World's Fair, it wasn't that he was just getting people in and construction people in and hiring people and things like that. It was also that because he was so charismatic and things, and because of the hotel, he was just getting people in off the street, and
Yeah,
so
he had his own drugstore and other shops on
yeah,
that main floor, just luring them right in.
exactly. And because there was such just the throngs of people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've ever been to a music festival and just the amount of asses to elbows that are freaking everywhere.
Well, and even but
You know what I
besides
mean?
that, Chicago during the time had 1.2 million people. It was the second most populated city in the U.S. during
Yeah.
the time, so it was already a thriving city.
Yep.
So he had a lot of distractions to kind of help him get away with the things that he did.
Wow.
So and so when you're talking about the figures and the 27 and Senate frame, okay.
Somebody sent me a friend request, Sean. It's all right. It's fine.
No, that's great. No, I thought it was a friend request for HH Holmes. But it's the estimates, are on the low end of what he confessed to, and things are, in the double digits. But there are some people that have been looking into, what they would estimate the actual number is at, and it possibly triple digits.
Yeah. So he ends up getting arrested in St. Louis trying to sell horses that weren't even really his yet because he didn't actually pay for them. And while he's arrested, he talks to somebody in there into scheming them into a life insurance policy, and says, "When I get out, I'll get a corpse. We'll say it was you, and I'll pay you your portion." Well, when he gets out, he tries to sell the life insurance claim, but the insurance agents don't believe him, so he doesn't get the money out of it. So that person that gets out of jail, they met in jail, when they get out, they actually turn him in. They say, hey,
Oh, that's how
yeah,
they caught him.
yes. So they caught him. Um, he ends up getting out because of his wife in Chicago ends up bailing him out. Um, but so he talks his henchman in, and to get more money, he tells his henchman, hey, how about we do a life insurance policy on you? And instead of actually doing the life insurance, like, what? I'm just going to kill him and I'm going to collect his life insurance policy. So he kills him, and he ends up getting arrested for that death. He gets busted for that, for killing
Mhm.
his henchmen, not because all the people he lured in and murdered and killed, because of his henchmen.
Wow.
So it's an absurd story. Like, this whole thing is just extremely messed up. And of all the things that he gets caught for, it's that.
Well, geez, at least he finally got caught. Um, I mean, there's like you said, it's kind of really, really difficult to tag a certain amount of people that he actually offed in his
Right.
reign of terror.
Mhm.
But I tell you what, that house had a lot of rooms in it,
Yeah.
and during something like uh, the events in Chicago, the World Fair. I'm sure he filled that hotel quite often, and
Yeah.
consistently and constantly. So um, I'm wondering if anybody made it out. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Uh, Depending on, I mean, he had to target people who are by themselves. I'm thinking
Well, and
who are,
that's kind of like how the ones that he lured in through ads. That's
yeah,
exactly what he did.
yeah.
They were
So,
women looking for marriage or whatever, so they'd
mhm,
sell all their belongings and move
mhm.
there. And yeah,
so
How
so
long did
that
this go on for?
from 1892 is when the fair started. In 1890, he started building the hotel. So it would be between that time that he started actually putting out ads to lure the women in.
And they
But
were
it would,
all women?
yes, he did. There were bodies that were male found, but majority of them were women. They even found one child body, but remember, his mistress and daughter lived there, so they think that he actually killed them, and that's what the kid's body was.
Yeah,
But
wow.
they
and
can't confirm.
when you start dipping into the connection to the Jack the Ripper thing,
Hmm.
that was one of the things that they leaned into is that he had a particular MO when he was killing folks, and the fact that it was a preponderance uh, of women, right? Um, that was one of the things. Plus I mean other evidence, but that was one of the things. But here, it just floors me that I really wish I knew if they had an estimated net worth on him, because all of these schemes and things that he was doing, he was getting money, but yet he
Mhm.
wasn't paying anybody. So my first thought is like, where the hell did all the money go? That's my question, because he's doing these schemes, he's walling things up, and he's making, the alarm, grandfather clock thing, and he's getting these insurance policies, and obviously he had to be successful at it. And what's he doing with all the cash? Where is all that?
Hmm.
And I know he's murdering the shit out of people, so that should bother me more. But this is one of those like weird notes of like,
I see nothing. Like, I just looked it up, and there's nothing that talks about his net worth.
so strange to me because
But
it's
I mean, he hid a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, finance. I doubt he had a bank account where he went and deposited money. I mean,
Right.
who knows?
Well, it's probably in a hotel somewhere.
Well, the hotel's gone now. Now
Right.
it's like a government facility there.
I
Um,
wonder. I wonder why. Hmm.
probably haunted as
they're
shit
using
too.
that cellar for bodies. This
Has
actually
it-
went a lot quicker than I thought it was going to.
uh-huh.
Um, but what do you guys got? Like, what do you guys think of this?
I'm
Like,
curious what John
obviously,
thinks, man, because you just been sitting here pondering all this stuff, and
man.
I'm jealous of you a little bit, dude. Seriously, because I would love to hear this stuff for the first time because it's so mind blowing what this dude
Mhm.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know, man. I don't know that I really have much. It's just crazy how that type of stuff could happen, and you
Mhm.
wonder, you know, how much of that is going on today, and that
Mhm.
we're missing. It's
Yeah.
like, are we walking by the hotel of horror when we're walking through our neighborhood town?
Right.
Mm.
You
which is
know?
definitely possible. I mean, the thing about the time frame is that he got away with a lot of it because there was no way to. I mean, there was no maybe a paper trail, but like even then, now we got technology where stuff's stored on backup
Yeah.
CCTVs, and I mean, there's just too many opportunities to get caught. Like the bodies, getting life claims on bodies that don't exist. That's a lot of the things that he did back then that didn't, you wouldn't get away with today.
No, not at all. Well, it's funny. This is kind
What?
of a tangential thing, but do you guys hear about Benjamin Franklin and how they found like was it 20 different skeletons in the basement of his house?
Huh.
And
I
there
never
was,
heard that.
I never
yeah.
heard that.
Well, okay, so this was flying around for a couple years, and people were saying, "Oh my God, one of our founding fathers was a serial killer." Well, they did some investigating. They found out that somebody that he was boarding in his house was a surgical student and a doctor eventually. And Benjamin apparently was letting him do like shit in the house. And then he was just, when he was done with the cadavers, was burying the stuff in the basement.
Huh. Wow.
So, yeah.
All right.
Look it up if whoever's watching stuff, look it up. There's a whole
Yeah.
story about it and how people thought that he was killing prostitutes and everything else. And
Yeah.
I don't think he'd have to, because by all records, he was a hell of a ladies' man. You know,
Hmm.
Well, and I think that was the thing about H.H. Holmes is that his perception from a woman's perspective was, oh, he's a wealthier guy, doctor in Chicago, and he's offering me to come stay with him. So it was probably very easy for him to lure people in, especially women.
Wow.
well, I mean, if I mean back then, I mean, we're in the midst of the industrial age and the uptick in that, and people aren't super enlightened or reading and everything, and this guy swoops in with his charm and all the his money and everything else, and apparently he was super fucking handsome. Um, yeah, I could see why it would be easy. You know,
So Sean, you mentioned where's the money?
yeah,
I just had a light bulb. Uh, Maybe he was actually paying for these women to come to his hotel. I mean, if you're getting money left and right, and there's no paper trail of where you're spending the money because you're not paying anyone, you're killing them off. But to lure women in, he's like, "Hey, I'll fly you to, or I'll ship you to, or get you
Wasn't
here."
flying him there in 1890, I promise you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I kind of messed that up, but I'll arrange for you to get here, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, and that's where the money went. At least some
So,
of it.
so are you suggesting like I mean, bringing them in, but also like maybe prostitutes, because who's going to miss a lady of ill repute, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
Which is also the MO of Jack the Ripper,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Right. It's possible.
And there was a whole series on what channel was that? History.
Yeah.
On the History Channel, I'm sure you can find it if you look up in the archives. The History Channel did a whole thing on H.H. Holmes being Jack the Ripper. There were DNA tests and all kinds of shit. It was wildly interesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Highly suggest dipping into it, because it was fascinating.
So you're
Really.
saying he was Jack the Ripper?
No, they ended up like recently. Didn't they recently do something where they found out that it wasn't? They did some kind of DNA match,
DNA
literally
match.
within the last couple of years, right?
Right, but this DNA match was on some blood that was on like a scarf or something that did not belong to the prostitute. And they said, well, this was obviously his, and it matches or whatever it was.
Mm.
And man, I don't know. I don't know enough about DNA technology to speak out intelligently. But it seems like a pretty wide swing. But it makes the story fascinating. Like if you know H.H. Holmes, you know Jack the Ripper, and you can
Yeah.
conflate the two into this like scary story and things. I mean,
But they
it's
were around the same time, and I
yes, sir.
think it's hard to kind of place him in London and there at the same time.
Yeah, well, it's actually they explain that away in the docu series. Again, I highly suggest looking into it. I didn't look. The thing is, I didn't wholesale buy into it, but I did think it was fascinating that they're like, you know, there's enough coincidences. Like if it's just one or two things, you're like, shut up. But when you have so many things, it's like, okay, you get this preponderance of evidence, and it makes you kind of go, okay, that could make sense.
Yeah.
Just like, and folks, look this one up. Uh, John F. Kennedy being the reincarnation of Abraham Lincoln. If you look at the thing, have you seen this?
No.
Dude, look
Sean.
it up. Look it up.
I feel like this should be your conspiracy theory show, okay?
Right?
I'm just saying, man, look it up. When you start seeing all the connectivity between the two,
Mhm.
you know what? You laugh now, but then you're going to go, holy shit.
It's just Gypsy Rose's mom. That's all.
Laugh.
Well, I mean, that's what we got for tonight's show, guys. I mean, he was a fucked up individual who did a lot of torturing, and even up till the day he died, he even tells the guy who, what did they call the guy who kills you, and or does the death penalty when they're killing you?
You mean like the executioner?
Yes, he
Yeah.
actually told the executioner to take his time, and they hung him, and he took about 17 minutes for him to die. He just strangled to death.
So he's just hanging there like, this is my thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So he was enjoying it, I guess, right?
I'm sure, man. It's just he didn't care. He didn't care. But yeah, that's what we got for tonight's show. Evolution, you got anything that you want to throw in there before we wrap it up?
He was a completely twisted individual for sure. I really don't have much. Usually I could come up with something, but
Yeah.
this person here was just mad crazy.
Yeah, it fascinates me what he did with like the furnishings, like, and how he like would borrow money against all these different places and then dip out without even getting caught and move on to the next thing.
Minus the murdering, that sounds like something I would have did all my 20s, dude, during that time.
Yeah,
I would
If
have
you- yeah.
robbed all those insurance companies.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not mad at him for doing it. I think it's clever as hell.
Hmm.
But it's just that's why I said these are things that back then would have been easy for somebody like us to do.
Well, to
Oh,
be fair, tagging on to what Ja said, insurance companies are responsible for far more deaths than HH Holmes ever would have been.
Oh, I'm
Wow.
sure.
Hey, I'm just saying, man.
Hey, thanks for inviting me to your guys' show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah,
it. I'm sorry
absolutely.
that you didn't talk more, but I hope you enjoyed it. I was hoping you would have had a
Silence.
little bit more to say.
Dead silence.
Well, I mean, it was like a learning experience, and I don't
Yeah.
know, it's very, I mean, I guess I could say fascinating, but at the same time, it's like, how do I get too interested in that? This guy was a dude, like the worst, right? From what you
Yeah.
guys told me, like it's like the worst that a
Uh-huh.
human being could be,
And I didn't
beside
even
like Stalin or Hitler.
if you
Right.
look into him, like the whole thing about what I do when we do this show, when I talk about the timeline, is I try to leave a lot out, a lot of the details. There's stuff, if you guys dive into it, he was a very messed up individual. Some of the torture things that he did are extremely gruesome.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's
Wow.
kind of why this show is what it is, man. I mean, we try to get a light comical side to it in a sense, but like he's just there's nothing good about this guy. There's not.
Well, so again, if you're leaning into the psychopathy, sure, but this is why I said I want to bring this up later in the show. There were folks that, because of who he was and what he did, said that he was possessed. Like that's the only explanation, And if you believe in God, devil, whatever, you want to lean into theology, because it's like, how do you explain it otherwise?
Right.
It's
Well, I mean, he got away with so much that he probably felt like he could do anything, literally, because he had done so much. I mean, he'd married more than one woman. He was getting buildings built and wasn't paying a dime for it. He was digging up graves or creating skeletons so he could
Yes.
sell them. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
he was just a scam artist, professional, massive killer.
Yes.
he, he he just had no remorse on any hand.
Do
Any
you think that? Do you think that this is partially because of his childhood and getting bullied in school and
no,
being
well,
like
I mean,
such a
it might
smart kid?
it might have made him hate people, you know, and how he was treated, but he he definitely got off on
Yeah,
on killing people
yeah.
once he started getting into that.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
so, but he got away with it. That's the thing. You know, he got away with every single thing. Even you mentioned, I guess he went to school on his rich parents of his wife.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
His first wife, he used their
yeah,
money to go to
yeah,
school.
yeah. So I mean, he literally was taking advantage of people from day one. You know,
Hmm.
so I mean, once you start doing that and know that you can get away with it, of course, keep going, right?
Yeah,
But I mean, most people with common sense or heart or some type of compassion, they wouldn't do that type of stuff. But this
well,
guy,
he had
he didn't
two
have it,
wives and a mistress.
right?
Yeah,
And who knows
who
what
knows
in
what else he's
between?
sleeping with?
Because
Yeah,
he was a peep show artist too. He was peeping through the
yeah,
windows and all that. So
yeah,
so yeah, he was definitely out there.
yeah, yeah. And I agreed. You got any last notes on this, Sean?
I,
I don't, man. Just thank
Oh,
you.
okay. Yeah,
You guys are awesome, man, and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you guys inviting me.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Of
brother.
course, man. Sean, anything for you?
Man, I just okay. The two things that I'm walking away from this, that one, the question of the money
Yeah,
that just nags at me, man, because of
Mm.
like
all the
where it went.
schemes, so many irons in the fire, and he was moving this here. I would love to see if you could ever trace that down, like how he kept all these schemes going. But the other thing is just aside from the cunning and everything else, this dude must have just been an unmitigated narcissist.
Mm.
You know what
Oh,
I
for
mean?
sure, for
Um,
sure.
Frightening. And how does a human being get to that point?
Well, and what Joss said earlier about how many people do that today. How many places you walk by and you have no idea what's going on inside. We've
Oh,
touched on that before. Like how neighborhood, just random residential neighborhoods. You don't know what's going on in those houses.
wasn't there something that came up with Disney, like the amusement parks?
Oh, there's a lot of stuff that we could dive into on probably one of Sean's show about the Disney
So
Yeah.
conspiracy. Oh, there he goes. All right. See you later, Jaw.
he just had enough, like, no.
So he already said thanks for having me on.
Yeah, yeah.
No, there is, and I actually think that would be I did a show on Stardom a long time ago that I'd love to do on Blurred Lines. I did something called Disneyception
Hmm.
because there's
Mhm.
a lot of stuff that we could dive into with Disney alone.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, it's you
Maybe
fucking
maybe it was me mentioning Disney that he had enough. He just had
Yeah,
to
he's like, no, I'm good.
go.
I love Frozen, man.
yeah. Which the conspiracy theory behind Frozen is that they created that movie simply to get the web searching away from Disney Frozen because people would look up the conspiracy surrounding Disney freezing his head.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
dude, there's a whole thing on that
Yep.
because that was the number one web search for Disney Frozen. They're like, we need to come up with a movie to get this away from it.
Yeah.
That's the reason. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All
I
right, guys,
honestly, I
man,
figured if
fun.
Patrick would have joined us, he would have had stuff to say because he really wanted to be a part of this, which
Oh,
sucks. But
heck yeah.
whatever.
Heck yeah.
I figured it was going to run a little bit longer, but hey, we're still hitting that hour mark. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it was a great show,
Mhm.
just like they all have been, and it did. I definitely am glad I pushed it off because there was so much, and I actually kind of had to revamp how I wanted to tell it, and I removed some things and just because you know how I am. I like for people to do their own research too, not just kind of go
Hmm.
off what we're saying.
Mhm.
Especially if you question anything we're saying. I am 100% understand people questioning, the sources of where we get this stuff. So,
Hmm.
um, but it actually, I've really got invested into doing a lot more research on a lot of my shows, specifically from this show. So I'm happy with where this is going, and I'm happy with the content we're getting out of these shows. And we just got. I'd like to get back to doing one every 2 weeks if we can.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
now that the hustle and bustle of the holidays is all done with.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always good to do a show.
Yeah, and this is. I mean, we do. I enjoy every show we do, but
Mhm.
I do really love doing this one and seeing the depth that people go to do. And we need to do another cold case because we haven't done one of those in a while.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
100%.
So, thanks everybody that's been watching tonight. We've had people tuning in the whole time. I haven't seen that number drop to 0 at all, so that's nice.
Nice, nice.
Appreciate you guys, and appreciate Ja for jumping on here. And yeah, and until next time, unless you guys got anything,
I'm good.
all right.
Nope.
Take
We
Good.
care.
will see you guys around. Thank you for tuning in.